Go, Andrew.
So, okay, so just to kind of explain the background for the video, we are looking to add Bob's new feature category attribution onto our error budgets page, which is here. And at the moment, it only tells us the attribution for Sidekick queues. And what would be really nice is if we could extend this so that it was also the web. And so we were discussing ways to do this. And the most obvious way is to just kind of use the metrics that have got these new, so if we take a look at this metric, for example, let me just open up a new Prometheus. So I'll just do this rather. I'll just do top K. So we have, that's interesting. Oh, not everything has it, right? Presumably.
No, if I remember correctly, I haven't merged anything yet, but I saw Sean added a bunch, but only the merge request controller has attribution right now, if I remember correctly.
Okay. So, okay, so this is what we've got at the moment, right? So we've got this feature category over here, source code management, and that's awesome. But the problem is if we had to take this metric and put it into here, especially, this has got a 7-day by default, it'll just time out. Like these metrics, basically anything with these metrics at the moment times out. And so we have to take a recording rule. Now, there probably are some recording rules that already have these in them, kind of by accident, because when you do aggregation in Prometheus, you can either say sum by, and you give it a bunch of labels, or you can say sum without, and then it drops some labels. And so if you add a new label like feature category, it kind of gets added. And so we do have some, personally, I'm not a big fan of that way because you kind of change your dimensions of your data. So I tend to use by most of the time because you can't accidentally kind of start adding new dimensions. But I'm sure there are some. But what I was suggesting to Bob was that we take the significant labels and use that as a way of doing this. And so just to kind of explain what significant labels are, on all of the service overview dashboards, like this is the service overview dashboard for the web. And, this is each of the SLIs, here we've got the load balancer, Puma, Workhorse, which are all kind of things that we're monitoring for the web servers. And then we have these collapsed rows, one for each component. And if we open that up, you'll see inside here, we have kind of even more detail than we have outside. And for each row, we have basically, we break the data down by some label. So in this case, this is kind of a non-aggregated version. And then we've got per fully qualified domain name, per method. And so we're breaking these metrics down by these different labels. And if you go into Workhorse, you'll see we've got different labels, or maybe they're the same. So yeah, so for Workhorse, we've got per fully qualified domain name and per root. And the way that we do that is in, let me just open up. If we go into the web metrics catalog definition, we have this attribute over here called significant labels. And what that says is with these metrics like GitLab, Workhorse, HTTP, requests total, if I go and look at what that looks like in Prometheus, oops. You know, we've got lots of different metrics on here, but when you are diagnosing a problem and trying to understand what's going on, you don't really care about all of them. Like you probably don't care about job. You kind of know what the job is. And so we say the metrics that we kind of interested in the most as operators or as people running the system are fully qualified domain name, which we'll slowly transition to away from as we move to Kubernetes because we don't have FQDN anymore. But then the other one, which is super useful, is root, which is like Workhorse has got about 10 different ways that it handles things, and that's on the root label. And so that over there is what drives these breakdowns here. So you basically get a row. You get the metrics aggregated by each of those labels inside this detail row. So by default, you don't see that, but if you in an incident, you might open this up and say, oh, all the errors are on this node, or all the errors are on this route. And that's kind of a way to kind of speed things up. So you're probably still wondering, why does this make any difference to this? And the reason is in the metrics catalog, we've gone some way towards automatically generating recording rules. And the place that we do that is, where is it? If you have any questions, just shout as well here. So
this
I don't know if you've seen this. Okay.
This I had seen before.
Okay, so basically what we used to do is we had the metrics catalog, and then for some of the metrics, they would rely on recording rules. But those recording rules were manually maintained. So you had like this system that was kind of all automatically generated, but then it was relying on some other code somewhere else to do the recording rules. And so the kind of things that would happen were like someone would take a look at the recording rule and they'd say, oh, you know, we don't need this label anymore. And they'd remove a label from the recording rule, and that would break all the SLIs, or they'd add another label, and there were all these different things. And so I was kind of getting quite frustrated. And also the other thing that might happen is that we would need another label and it wouldn't be on these metrics. And so we built this small thing called recording rule metrics. And we use it for Sidekick, because Sidekick also has very high cardinality. And so what it says is, in the metrics catalog, whenever you are dealing with these metrics, metrics on these names, try and use a recording rule instead. And then when we're generating the service level metrics, what we do is we go and we take a look at all the places where we use this metric, and then we look at all the labels that we use for filtering and all the labels that we use for aggregation. And we basically come up with a unique set of all of those labels. And then we automatically generate a recording rule from that set. So to kind of give you an example, like if I go to this Sidekick jobs fail total over here, and then I add, for the selector, I add like, whatever, wombats, yes, right? Kind of in the old world, that would break because this recording rule, well, the recording rule that we'd be using would also need to have that on it, and like everything, you know, you'd have to manually go and update something else, and that was error prone. And now what the metrics catalog does is it goes, when it generates the recording rule for Sidekick jobs fail total, it'll go, one of the things that it filters on for that is wombat label, and it will automatically add that to the recording rule. And likewise, if I remove this from here, it automatically removes it from the recording rule that gets generated. So if you go look at the auto-generated So you can see here, this is the recording rule that gets generated. So, you know, it's looked through the entire metrics catalog, and it's seen that the labels that we use for that metric are environment, feature category, that's useful, you know, less than or equal to for the bucket. And that was all, this recording rule is totally automatically generated because of that definition up here. And we also use these in, I'm pretty sure if you go into these dashboards, we use the same sidekick. We use the same recording rules to generate this stuff. Sorry, I know this is probably quite a lot to take in.
No, it's actually quite cool. Could you also, after this, show the method where you, like how you are collecting that from?
Sure, I'm happy to.
From the are you doing that after you generated the JSON?
It as part of it. So well, not the JSON, but the recording rules. I'll show it to you in a second. But here you can see I've used that recording rule. So when I build that dashboard, I don't use this thing. I actually just said, you know, sidekick jobs completion total, and then there's kind of like a pipeline, and in that pipeline it says, well, the labels that were requested were X, Y, and Z, and the aggregations were these, and therefore it actually matches with the recording rule, and so I'll use the recording rule, and so it's kind of done the substitution for the record. Oh, and the other thing that's really important is that this has got a rate on it, right? So this has got a 5-minute rate, and if I request like a 10-minute recording rule, sorry, a 10-minute rate, then it won't resolve down because it doesn't have a 10-minute recording rule.
And then it's going to default back to the original metric.
Yeah, to the original query. And so why, like I'm still like adding to the stack, but it'll start unwinding quite soon. So the reason why this is important is because when the resolution is, when it's deciding what labels to use for a recording rule, one of the things it looks at is the significant labels. So any label that you add to, where is it? Here. Any label that gets added into your significant labels gets included in the recording rule kind of automatically. So,
and that would cause an extra row to be added to the details on the dashboard, on the service dashboard.
Yeah, which is also kind of useful, I think, because, you know, maybe one of the ways that you want to slice and dice is you see like a huge error rate, you open up that detail page, and what you see is that all the errors are coming from a certain feature category, and then you know who to speak to. So, and if you take a look, going back to the sidekick example, where we've already sort of done this, let's just go back here. You'll see that we do that with these component details there per feature category. But these are, hey, here we go. There's a bug which causes these latency ones not to work. It's quite a complicated bug to resolve as well, so it just needs a lot of time. But there you can see, you know, the spikes are on a certain error category, feature category. I don't know what's happened to my Grafana. Looks like it's crashed. Hello. Well, I don't know what's going on there, but hopefully it'll come back. So that's why, so what I was going to say, right, is if we go back to the web over here and we take a look at Puma. So for Puma, for the error rate, we're using that. Does that have the label on it?
I don't think so. I don't know where.
Okay, well then that's
the problem. So that's the metric we probably want to add it to.
It would be super useful. I mean, we could probably get around it the other way, but I quite like these metrics for other reasons.
I was just about to say, like, let's like maybe not tag too much on the transaction things, because we're kind of unsure where they're coming from and how useful they are.
That's exactly my gut feel on that as well. So perfect. So, you know, if we were to add HTTP request duration, so let's just try that. But it sounds as though there's a little bit more work before we can do that, which is kind of
But that's why
exactly why we had this
that's
call.
why I opened that issue, because I didn't know which metrics we needed.
Yeah. So if we go to here and we go to Puma and we just add here, like, what's the status of the moving the status of the histogram and onto the not histogram, onto the counter?
Onto the count. I don't know by heart.
Yeah, because that, I mean, it doesn't matter, but that will also make a big difference here with these, and we'll need to update this and probably the recording rule as well. While you look at that, I'm just going to rerun the generation. I'm kind of surprised that's not one of the ones that we do already, but anyway.
Could you, while you're running that, also show us where you're generating, like where you're aggregating all the information, like to generate the recording rule?
So it's pretty complicated, which is
why I would like you to explain it while I have you on the call, because otherwise.
Yeah. So we have this thing called, and it's still in need of like more iterations because it is a complicated piece of code. But it's also one of those things where people say, you know, the code behind the metrics catalog is like really complicated, but it does do stuff like this, which I'm really happy about, and like ultimately leads to less like manual work in maintaining 3 different things, which I hate doing, right? And so we have this thing, and we got called the recording rule registry. And I've been kind of moving away from, because recording rules are a super overused term, and it's quite complicated to understand what we're talking about. So I've been sort of moving away from calling it recording rules to intermediate recording rules, because what we have is we have a metric, and then we have an intermediate recording rule, which we don't actually, it's not the end game. It's kind of like a halfway house. And then from that, we use that to generate the SLIs and everything else. And so I might call this like something, and I think I've got that name in somewhere. No, I don't. There are certain places where I call it the intermediate recording rules, but that's kind of beside the point. They're kind of temporary, right? They're kind of like a pre-processing step before the next step. And so what we do here is it's got, on its public methods, it's got this thing called resolve recording rule 4. And so you give it the type of aggregation you're doing, the labels that you're aggregating over, and the function that you're using is, so kind of all the queries have to be of a similar form, which is basically like function on a vector and then aggregated on a bunch of labels, which is like 90% of what we do, right? Obviously there's some clever things, but a lot of it is that. And so this kind of just, it only deals with those kind of functions. And I think that's like a reasonable thing to do. But basically it says, you know, what's the aggregation function? What are the labels? What's what I call the range vector function? And what's the interval? Because like I said, we have to do for each of those. And then what are the what's the query that you're running?
And the intervals, I saw those were like the ones you defined a little bit more up, like fixed ones, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes. That's
right. And so at the moment it's hard coded in here at those. This 1 minute's going to go soon because I think we've kind of, well, I don't like 1 minute. They're just noisy and they don't have enough data in them. So I think that's going to go. pretty much don't have much left on that. And so anyway, what it does is this will then go and it'll look up, and it's got like an internal registry, which is basically like a big hash, you know, mostly driven by the metric name, but then also it validates that the labels that you're using in the selector and the aggregator are a subset of the labels that it's using on the recording rule, or, you know, they're contained within. And that obviously the range vector matches and the aggregation function matches. So, you know, that has to be the same, that has to be the same, that has to be one of the ones that you understand, that has to be one that you are have recording rules for, and then the labels come from the selector and the aggregation labels. So if you go look at how this gets used, service metrics, rates. Right, so when we, in the metrics catalog, we have this thing called like a rate metric, and it's how we model.
That you call for every service.
Yeah, exactly. And so we intercept it quite low in that service when it's you know, for a definition of a rate metric, when you say basically, give me the PromQL for this definition, what it does is it goes, at this point, it goes to the registry. It asks the registry, hey, like, I'm trying to build up some PromQL for this definition. Can you help me out here? And then it'll either say like, yeah, here you go, or it'll say no. The thing in this code that I don't like, that I want to fix, is this is a kind of a library that is, I want to extract from the runbooks and just have it as a library, but it has a dependency on the registry, which is part of the runbooks repo. So it's kind of like an inverse dependency that I need to get rid of, because yeah, it's the registry of all those things is part of the implementation where this library depends on it. So there's kind of a circular, well, there is a circular dependency there, which is horrible, but I can fix it, but it's just more work. And then the other part of it, which is kind of required reading, is back in the metrics catalog, we do this thing where we collect all the, basically when we start running the queries, where is it? Maybe it's up here. Yeah, here's the, yeah, collect metrics and labels.
That's where you're keeping track of.
Yeah, so I basically walk through all the functions, through all the definitions, and I kind of, yeah, I kind of step through everything as a pre-step before I start generating anything, and I build up those. So, I mean, it's pretty, so I start here, I say collect metrics and labels, and then I go through each service in the service catalog, or in the metrics catalog, and then I go through kind of each function on that, and I say like, hey, give me those, you know, the labels, the
like
aggregation. Yeah. And then obviously for some of them, it's like, you know, some, but then for the labels, it's kind of adding to the pot, the union of, the set, because JSON, it has got sets. So you're kind of just pushing extra things in there. Yeah, so it's kind of complicated, but it does work.
That's where we read the significant labels.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Those are
right here. Apply significant labels. Yeah.
So we go to every service in the registry, check which significant labels have been defined, and then pick them up here. So later we can use this to generate the recording rule.
And we also use the labels that we pick from the request
From the
rate and the error
selectors,
rate. And
yeah.
So one thing to note about this is that we only use selectors that are hash functions, because I didn't want to go through the bother of like writing a parser for PromQL selectors. And so, you know, if you look at these, the sort of way that I do selectors now like this, is much easier for me to parse out the keys. I mean, there's lots of reasons why I prefer it. Like you can union them together and you can manipulate them much easier. So if you want to use this, the components need to use
A hash type selector rather than PromQL.
And we could, like, if we didn't want that, we could write a PromQL parser in JSON it, but like, just don't do that. So that was that. Oh yeah, let's go take a look at what that code looks like. I'm kind of interested to see if it worked.
Yeah, see what the diff is now.
Right. So yeah, that's kind of one thing that'll be kind of interesting about this. Yeah, I mean, here you can see it's done it. And so there's one slightly concerning thing here, and that's that the same metric is used by 3 different services, but the definition of the recording rules, did we add? Oh, we obviously didn't add feature category to the things yet.
Not yet, yeah. Because it won't be there yet. But that doesn't matter, does it?
Yeah, no. Exactly. It'll just work. But if we had to add in here, not that it's there, but
if you add it now, it will just all be empty and fine. And then as soon as we start emitting with those labels on those metrics,
it'll just pop up. The one thing that's one reason why I don't want to do that, and I'd rather wait until it's there, is that we can actually kind of cause more cardinality explosion. So what we want to do is we want, like with these recording rules, we want to take something that's got like really big cardinality and bring it down to much smaller where it's manageable. And then what's nice is all the other recording rules are using that. So we take a lot of load off the Prometheus server. You know, instead of having to go through 100, 250,000 metrics every 15 seconds or every minute, it's going through, this much smaller set. And so what I like to do, if I ever change those, is I just like to go and check the definitions that have been created, like these ones, and run them, and then just see what they, how they look and how much cardinality they have. And if we, this wasn't it. Probably shouldn't have done that. 8,000, we kind of knew that. But so I would rather not add feature category until we've added it. I mean, feature category won't, we kind of know that it won't add anymore, will it? Because
right now it would be added.
Yes, it would. But it could, that's probably not going to work then, because it's going to add several hundred, how many feature categories are there? 20.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Not 100.
Yeah. So then it'll probably be fine. And then what that means, sorry, this is, I'm still actually unwinding the stack to the original question. What that means is that we can then use that recording rule in the, where's my,
in the service catalog.
Yeah, so we'll have like this, here is it here. We'll have this recording rule, SLI aggregations, and we can use that in the error budget page because it'll have the feature category on it.
Yeah, and won't be because we're aggregating over a week, so it won't be as huge as the metric itself.
Yeah. So that might be the best way for us to do that. And then, you know, all the added benefits are we automatically get it in the pull downs, you know, and anything else. Kind of, we also just saying more generally, like this is a useful label, you know, and maybe in future we can auto generate queries for SREs, you know, like when there's an incident, like, hey, you know, or even just auto generate documentation.
Or like alert inside the channel together with the incident management or whatever. That, like, it would be cool. Like now we go through all engineers when we need one. When we ping an on call, we go through all of them, and then maybe we have somebody from the feature category, maybe not.
Yeah, and that's where we've already, you know, we've already got some of those alerting rules that will kind of go to the pages channel or the GitLab channel. And like at the moment, it's only driven by service. So you can only do it for services that are very obviously correlated with a team. But like that's very much like there's an issue about that, actually routing the alerts on the feature category, which is awesome.
Cool. So just double checking now. We need the new feature category on the
HTTP request duration.
Yeah, and that's inside the request wrap middleware.
I would say we want to do that other task at the same time because we actually don't want it on the bucket. It's probably better to have it on the counter.
Only on the counter, you mean?
Yeah. But then at the moment, we don't have the status on the counter, right? So we wouldn't be able to tell which of the requests are in error.
Yeah, I was looking up that issue. I think Sean picked it up like this week.
It's not hard, but the problem is it's kind of like it's going to break a bunch of stuff when we do it. So that's where it requires caution.
It's now in proposal. I'm going to move that forward later today. I'm going to add it to do now.
Awesome.
Nobody has picked it up yet, but I'm going to block the issue you just mentioned on it because we want the feature category label on the counter.
I think
I'll do that. Yeah, I'll get through that to that today. And then what do we need to do? Like how do you imagine, like if we add the feature category as a significant label inside the Puma service, we'd have a new row there that shows the rates per feature category. What if we also wanted to include those things in the error budgeting dashboard that currently is only populated by Sidekick?
So what we can do, so I think as a first step, like the first iteration, we don't aggregate up to like a single like feature category. We kind of have, here's your information for Sidekick. And here's information for like web or, you know, not necessarily web, but like HTTP requesty stuff. And then like we just kind of duplicate what we've got on the error budgets. I can share my screen if it makes it easier, but like we just kind of have the same. I mean, that is not really used. I think ultimately where we want to go is we want to kind of just have an aggregated, you know, everything rolled up to the level of a feature category, and it's kind of like your overall score.
Yeah, but then it should be possible. Like if I was in the create source code group, I would go there and see like, yeah, we're doing good. And if we're not doing good, I want to be able to expand and see we're losing all of our budget inside Sidekick. And then I want to dig down which worker is causing the headaches and so on, like the same per request.
Like in the past, this is now I'm just kind of spinning off a little bit, but like I'll just mention it. In the past, I also thought it might be useful to generate like a dashboard per feature category that's kind of got their, like each feature category or maybe each team's kind of information on it. you know, which is like almost like their dashboard in Grafana. And we can totally do that because we've got all the mappings. We've got the stages YAML. We've now got the feature categories. And we have a map. Yeah, so that's all we need really. And then we could start coming up with a thing where it's like I'll give you an example why I thought about this. Like if you look at the stuff Dylan and his team are doing with search, they're adding a lot of stuff to the web, or I think it's a web dashboard, but they're the only, and I'm really happy that they're doing that, and like that should be encouraged. But really, they're the only ones that are ever going to use that stuff. And so having like a dashboard where like there's a whole bunch of stuff that's auto-generated, like here's your feature category stuff, and then he can add they can add their stuff into that dashboard like further down, you know, like the way we do with the service overviews, where some of it's generated and then some of it's like automatic. Sorry, that's spinning off a little bit into like future worlds, but
no, I think it makes sense. And the reason that Dylan and his team have an easier time doing that is because the things that they're adding are around Elastic, so it's their own service, and they just want a place to view it, and the web dashboard is there.
Yeah, it's there, and like we haven't thought of a better place for them. So yeah. And it's awesome that they are adding those things.
Yes.
Like, you know, we don't want to discourage it, but yeah.
No, but it would be nice if everybody has their home in the metrics in our Grafana, like their own thing where they can dig down.
Yeah.
For this, do you like? Let's just, as you mentioned, copy what we have for Sidekick, aggregate it over a week, but not combine it yet into.
No, into a single. I think because the other thing is once we start looking at it, I suspect that the numbers from the request ones are going to be much, much higher in most cases, right? And so if you're aggregating, you've got to do it in a kind of careful way because average is probably not that good. But then also like a weighted average based on like number of requests, you'll totally drown out everything from Sidekick, right? Because maybe you got 100 times more requests on the web than you do in Sidekick. So your weighting will be vastly skewed in that direction. That's why I don't really have a story for that. So I think it's better just to keep them separate until we can kind of figure out like how to
weight them.
Yeah. Because giving them 50-50 weighting also feels wrong, but then giving them like just wiping out the low stuff is probably wrong as well.
Yeah, let's get the numbers in first and then see what they look like too.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. I'm going to comment that on the issue where you've just linked and do the blocking and stuff. I might ping you in Slack later to verify if I've got everything right. Cool. Thank you very much for your time, Andrew.
Cool.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bob. Have a good day. Bye.